Welcome back. And today I think I have something really interesting for you. At least something not quite usual for US made videos, for English speaking kind of type of YouTube knife reviews. I do have two knives which I decided to combine into one review, but I'll focus on one of them a little bit more. Those are two knives. Those are not just two wooden sticks. Those are two knives, and as you can see, they are made out of wood. I mean, the whole case is made out of wood. The handle and the sheath, and here's the same, different wood, different knives, different origin from the knives, and that's what I'm gonna show you today. So let's take a look at the knives first. As you can see, that's a Japanese knife. It comes with a sticker here, which I'm not good at Japanese. I could try to understand it through Google Translate. It talks something about the knife itself. Um, and this knife, you may say, also looks kind of Oriental or Japanese, but it's not. In fact, this knife is specific regional knife from Russia, which is called Yakutian knife. It comes from Yakutia region. The design of the knife. I'll tell you exactly where this knife is made and so on. But this specific type of knife is called Yakutian knife. And it has this specific feature that it's typically made out of blade and wood for the handle. Well, sometimes it's ivory, of course, for more expensive models, or historically it was ivory because it was a good material which people could salvage over there or use for the handles. But if this knife has this very specific feature, it has this like a very wide and usually it's like a forged, traditionally it's a forged fuller. In this specific knife, as you can see, it's made out of Damascus steel, which is more modern version of the knife, but it is a hand forged knife with a hand forged fuller in the middle, which kind of goes pretty much almost the whole length of a knife, and it gives it. And by the way, this is a flat. The surface is flat, and the fuller is forged inside there, so it gives it like a hollow profile to the blade. This is like a concave profile on this side of the knife, and then the blade actually goes on one side all the way to the tip. It's a little bit of a drop point design. Usually those Yakutian knives a drop point design, a little bit or sometimes they can be done as a straight one. So the Japanese knife has a very similar feature. It has hollow, I think it's a grinding. I don't think they forged it this way. It has like it has this interesting profile on this side, and of course it's also forged steel, forged knife, but does have a different sharpening idea. It has a different tip, but we'll talk a little bit more about it. But the idea of the construction for those two knives is very similar. You see kind of like a single piece of wood when the knife is inside the protective sheath or carry sheath, but it is a knife and you can take it out. So why don't we go ahead and go a little bit deeper into the details about those two knives. We'll compare them a little bit, and we'll talk about where I got them, how much they cost, does it worth the money, why I like it, why I got them, and so on. So let's do comparison first for the different features, and then let's talk about a little bit more history behind them and why I got them. So Um, they are not such as like a small knives. This one is a little bit longer, because I think they should just the general idea of this knife is this is called like a medium Yakutian knife. Sometimes they're a little bit smaller, sometimes they can be longer. It is all-purpose hunting utility knife. It's not a fighting knife. It's not a self-defense knife for that region. And again, the way it's done is done in a little bit more modern way, with Damascus steel and a good wood for the whole construction. It's done really, really nice. And as you can see, the idea behind this knife is that one side is curved, the other side is flat. So you pretty much have like a cutting edge only on one side. So I shouldn't say chisel ground. It's all of those standard definitions for the knife, or like a flat grind, chisel grind. They are kind of not applicable here because this specific regional Yakutian knife gotta be done in a specific way to represent that history, to represent that tradition. This one has its own issues. I'll get to that in a moment. So it's gotta be done this way. This is a Japanese knife also. It is supposed to be a utility knife, all-purpose knife that has nothing to do with fighting, self-defense, not considered as a weapon. But on the similar sides, similar kind of ideas with this knife, you'll see that it also has this. It's not a fuller idea; it's just curvature of the blade in general, one-sided grind, one-sided blade creation. But again, in this knife, what I see, it's not true one-sided thing, but a different tip. It is spear point in our modern definitions, so it's of course a little bit stronger point for any type of work which you would need to do with this knife. I don't want to cut this, man. This point would be kind of a little bit weaker for if you want to do like work with the wood, but in reality, this knife in Yakutia, and if you don't know what Yakutia is, it's a big, huge actually region in a mid-eastern side of Russia, in Siberia, of course. It's a big region which goes from all the way north through the North Ocean to almost like a Chinese border. It's a big region, and as you can imagine, it's forests, it's tundra or whatever it's called. It's some fields. It's cold in winter. It's really cold, and it not even in winter. Summer's not too hot over there as well. So this knife is more like for hunters, for people who have all kind of deers. So for those kind of people, that they would use it as a knife to skin the deers, to do all kind of work on the wood, on the meat, on pretty much everything. So it's all-purpose knife, traditional knife design for those people. Where this design comes from in Japan, I don't know. It's very interesting to see very similar approaches to get the knife done, and differences as well. So first difference which you'll see is that they are actually sharpened from a different sides. So this one has a flat surface on the right side and a curved surface on the for the blade on the left side if I hold it in my right hand. This one is vice versa, flat surface on the right side, sorry, on the left side from my hand, and the cutting edge is created from right side. They will cut differently. By the way, I did not cut with them anything. Those are my kind of collection knives for the to represent those specific regions. I didn't even try to cut anything with them. Why? I don't know. Didn't have enough time to test them. Plus, I don't think it's a true comparison, which I really need. I like the history behind those knives. I like how they look. They are on the shelf in my knife collector's display cabinet. One day I'll show you a bigger picture of that cabinet. I'm still working on some stands and shelves and everything. So that's why I like that's what I like in those knives. So that's why I got them. So don't blame me for this. It's my collector's idea just to have those knives. So this knife is sold by mass drop or drop at the moment. It is really made in Japan, as you can see here, and I tend to believe that it's true. But it's of course sold for American audience, and again, we don't know how much popularity or how much usability this kind of knife has really historically between Japanese people, fishermen, whatever they say at the moment was a fisherman's knife, and blah blah blah. And by the way, it's called, how it's called, keep forgetting how it's called, Makiri Hocho fixed blade knife. So again, you can find it on mass drop or drop site. Maybe you can find it somewhere else. Also, of course, this knife is featuring high carbon steel. It's hand forged. And again, I'm going through comparison here at the moment, and you'll see some of the smaller details which I like and don't like about those two knives. Some of those details will be representation of a tradition. Some of those details will be representation of specific build quality of those knives, and that's something again I want to share with you. I bought those two knives recently, and I like them, but in some details I'm a little bit disappointed. So those details, I just wanted to highlight those details with you, so you can make your own decision. Do you want to get those knives, and does it really worth the money which is being asked for those knives for you to buy them? Okay, so things which I like and don't like about those knives, things which I see different, I'll kind of keep highlighting for you in this video. So this is a high carbon steel, whatever it says on the description on mass drop site. They do say knife type something, sorry, not type, steel type something, Japanese steel, which is hardened quite well. That's what I see. But unfortunately, what they don't say that it's laminated. And as I'm kind of going through this angle change, you see that it's the edge is done from one steel, and then there's a layer of another steel, and you clearly see this line along the blade. I don't know. It does. The description for the knife does not say what kind of steel other steel is. Is it the same steel, just hardened differently and then forged together? I have no idea. So that's something to improve and probably investigate a little bit more. Another thing which I did not like about this knife and the way this knife is implemented comparing to this one, they say that the whole construction, the whole knife is done from a single piece of acacia wood. I like this wood. It comes unfinished, so you can keep it like this. If you're going to be using this, it will actually get a lot of grease from your hands and will not be super perfect. So you can sand it and then you can oil it if you want. That's a lot of people would actually love to do that. That's not bad per se. Comparing to this one's come really well finished. I'll talk about it a little bit more. But that's whatever description says, it's not true. It's not a single piece of wood. You see this gap here? It's not like a gap. It's like a seam. I can see that this whole thing is done from two pieces of wood glued together, and then you can see that in here you can see the line here, and you can see a line here. So it's two pieces of wood, and of course you can see the line here, right? Focus, yeah, I'll see that. So it's two, at least for the okay, let me put it this way. Maybe it was a single piece of wood one day, and then they cut it with something super thin, and then they glued it together so it looks like one piece again, but it's not. And you can see the seams because the handle doesn't have that specific issue. If I'm looking really precisely, I don't see that seam, but I do see some kind of an insert on the back. I don't know. Maybe it's an insert, maybe it was not polished well, not cut well, but kind of have a strange feeling about it. On one hand it's good, on the other hand it's not perfect. Plus the way it's fitted into the handle, you see those huge holes on the side. That's something what I don't really like. Other than that, very good knife. For me, why I bought it, it represents for me Japan. I've been to Japan multiple times. I did not have a chance to go there and buy a proper Japanese knife for my collection. All I have from Japan is this and this. Those are two Japanese knives which represent Japan in my collection. And again, at least for this knife, they say, yep, it's laminated steel, and you can clearly see it's not super high quality knife, as you know. It does have one harder steel in the middle for the blade, and then softer steel on the outsides. Again, that's a hand forged blade. It's a little bit not, the middle steel is not centered really well, so you can see it from the other side. But this is a Japanese produced knife. How's that called? Keep forgetting Japanese words. But again, those knives are well known. They are for sale pretty much everywhere, but not expensive. True Japanese knives by the manufacturer. Their design. If we start talking about history, my understanding is that early 20th, maybe late 19th, maybe late 19th century, early 20th century, when this design of a knife was introduced in Japan. How and why, that's conversation for the different video. Since then, that became a quite popular simple pocket knife in Japan as well. This design most likely is way older, and most likely does represent more traditional Japanese way to make knives. So you have your blade, you have like half tang, which you insert into the handle. I don't see any wooden construction here to fix the blade, so most likely it's just a glued in type of construction, which should be good enough for the cheap man's knife. That's what it's supposed to be. But the whole tradition to forge it, to form the blade, to maybe make center of that blade with harder steel, make a simple tip, not modern Americanized tanto or something like that. And of course, it's not supposed to be the end of the, like a broken part of the samurai sword type of thing. No, it's in my eyes, this is very traditional Japanese knife, and that's why I got it. I got it mass drop, and as I said, I paid about $80 for this knife, which I believe is not too much. But given all of those issues which I see, the gaps, not true single piece construction for the sheath, I'd say I don't want to recommend this. if you're like me, you want something truly Japanese, not like your marketed kitchen knives Japanese, which are specifically done for American region. Something which looks more traditional, kind of very simple. As I said already, cheap man's knife, fisherman's knife. Then get it if you less care about 80 bucks. 80 bucks will give you a lot of nice other nice knives, but this one is for me just to remember about Japan. And I do love wooden construction in general. Those knives which kind of mimic themselves as a wooden stick from a Japanese side of history, Japanese side of visual things. I like those. And by the way, you see that it's not a perfect fit between handle and the case. I can't insert it better. Nope. Sorry, it's not perfect. So that's probably the issue of just my knife. And as I said, I still like it. It's still gonna be displayed in my collection. Maybe when I have time, I'll sand it. Of course, I'll remove that sticker, sand it, oil it. It will look even better and it will last way longer. And by the way, as I said, high carbon steel, I can't store it just like this. I need to oil it and make sure it wouldn't rust. It actually started to collect the spots immediately. You see along this line, so that's where probably center steel is touching the other steel, so that this line where it starts getting those tiny stain spots is more affected by that process of actually forming those two steels together, and then this line will be catching rust and stains way easier than the rest of the blade. So on this side it's polished way better. On this side, I don't know why, but I already see the spots starting to form along that line. Okay, anyway, I think that's it about this knife. As I said, I still like it, but I don't recommend it to get it for your whatever, if you want to use it or if you want to somehow just have single Japanese thing. I have those two, that would be good enough for me. Let's talk a little bit more about Yakutian knife and the way it's done and why I like it and what's good about it. First of all, imagine that region in the middle of Siberia, and it's big region. It has its own specific nationality which lives there, of course consists of maybe multiple subtypes and so on, and they seems to for many 100 years kind of create their own design for the knife and use it. So first of all, where this design of a knife comes from, most of the people say that of course first knives were produced from a really strong bone of animals. So imagine it's like a half of that bone tube, which is really hard because it's curved. It is stronger than a flat bone, and then you can just sharpen it on the stone just to give it some sort of a tip. Wrap something around the other end. That would be your handle, or maybe just make it from something else, and that's it. That would be a knife. And you would need a sheath for that, and you can make a sheath out of wood, out of, I don't know, leather, out of another bone, just to keep this thing protected when you go, so it wouldn't smash on things back in the day. So then looks like that tradition to make some kind of instrument from the bone went into the knives which are made out of metal. But imagine that region does not have a lot of producing power for the metal. It's not a metallurgy region where they would start making high carbon steel and forge it really well and harden it really well. No, no, they couldn't do it over there. So the what they could do, they get some steels, they mix them together, try to get the good ones, try to forge them as much as they could. Of course, it wouldn't be like the like super steel, like in Europe. By that time, there would be already better steels in hundreds of years ago. So it will be still a softer steel, but when you make it like this with this fuller, or even just forge it like this, it will serve multiple purposes. Out of softer steels, you will get a knife which will be a little bit more reliable for breaking. It will not break that easy if we want to push it here and start doing like a prying movements. It will hold it a little bit better. Second thing, which you gotta remember, it's gotta be really cold. So this knife will be used in extreme cold conditions for, let's say, skinning the animal. So the second benefit which they get from this fuller is that if you're skinning, you have less contact of that flat surface with the skin, or where the blood is freezing kind of immediately, as you know, blood or meat is freezing immediately when you skin with this knife. So that's another benefit of that fuller. Plus, you're getting additional benefits. You are using less materials. You can make like a wider and longer blade using less metal. Metal is very expensive and valuable thing over there. And of course, it will not be full tank construction. It will be just a half tank or something. Gets into your handle, and then glued, or just whatever, hammered in, maybe using some additional sticks in there, additional wooden things. So of course this knife is done recently. It is actually done, it's produced not in Yakutia. It's made in somewhere near Nizhny Novgorod by in Russia, of course, also by one of the kind of like a custom makers, but it's not a super expensive custom knife. They make small batch production of those Yakutian knives out of different steels, out of different woods. This wood is called Venge wood, African wood, really nice. You can see all of those details here. You see that the way this specific knife is constructed, they most likely had a single piece of wood. This one and this one, it was most likely single piece of wood made together, and then they did bolsters to match the profile of this wood from a different angle. They cut it from a different angle, and then they made, most likely they made this intermediate part from a single piece of wood, and then they've cut it with something super thin, so it matches perfectly together. And the same thing for the rear, kind of like a wooden bolster here. Maybe what they were able to do, they were able to get a tang of a knife like almost here into this area, put something magical like a hook in here, glue it better inside the handle, and then put a bolster on it just to cover that rear part, or maybe even have some kind of like a, I don't know, maybe they would keep rotating this and then pull the knife with I don't know, with wire. Just again, I'm just guessing what can you do to make it a little bit better construction when you have access to the handle from the other side. And of course this bolster is fitted quite well to the knife itself and then to the handle, and then it makes almost like a perfect lines, perfect transition from this wood to this wood, and then of course from handle to the sheath. It's almost perfect, like perfect I should say. And the sheath itself is made from a single piece of wood. There's no seams. No, as you can see this from this side as well. There's no seams. It's a single piece of wood, and I don't think it's possible to show it on the camera, but the way why it holds quite well is that this opening for the knife matches the knife quite well, but it doesn't provide any specific kind of friction to the blade. Like compared to the Japanese knife, the whole sheath has this whole, like a wood has a friction. It's touching the blade and it holds it in there. Inside there, there's some kind of like a velvet padding inside that this part of sheath. Most likely they did the opening for the blade way wider than the blade itself. They made a padding in there, and then this padding holds the blade really soft and nicely. So that's why it doesn't require it actually goes in and out quite well, and it holds quite well. Just a little bit of rattling in here in this bolster area, and that's it. Other than that, it's perfect. All right, and then let's talk about the blade. And I gotta say something which is not really pleasant here. And when you will be buying your Yakutian knife, if you want one for collection, pay attention to this. So as I said, metallurgy in the Yakutian region is something questionable. They were trying to do what is called bulat steel, not Damascus steel, but bulat steel. Is like a boiled steel with it from a different types of steel. So harder steel, or steel which will harden better, will be mixed with more softer steel to kind of get all the benefits of layered steel or Damascus steel, but they were not forged as Damascus, just a boiled mixture of different steels, and which is then hardened. So that would be a traditional implementation of steel in that region. So they would make it, then they would forge it and make the blade. So it wouldn't be Damascus like this. This Damascus is just the way how good Damascus can be done by this specific manufacturer. And by the way, I should say a little bit more about manufacturer. This is who done this knife. This is called Semin knife. Semin is a last name of a maker, or at least the owner of this knife shop. That's the certificate of for the knife. They say sizes for the knife, they say knife type, who made it, all of those confirmation stamps and so on. Usually those are required. This kind of like a certificate for the knife is required by Russian law for most of the knives which are sold, that they are not a weapon. They're not like a military knife. They are utility knife, hunting knife, kitchen knives. It's okay to sell them without military license, without even like hunting license, without weapon license. They gotta confirm with some standards for the length, for the width, for shape of a blade. It's a weird and not very good laws which kind of limit knife production and knife industry, but you gotta have it. So that's what it says. It's a medium size Yakutian knife. That's what it says. Medium size meaning that it can be smaller, it can be larger, and as you can see, it's not a super large knife. It's a little bit over 5-inch kind of knife. And this specific maker, they decided to make this knife with the Damascus steel. It can be with actually multiple different steels. Steels made in Russia, European steels, more common I don't know, for 20 type of steels. Sometimes they do it from even high grade, very modern powder metallurgy steels. Variety of options. Of course, price would be way different. This one is done from Damascus, and what they did, what I don't like about this knife, I do like this Damascus. It's really good, very thin layers of Damascus, nice pattern here, and it's true Damascus. Actually, it's not just some etching or stuff like that. Just to give you an idea, somewhere here, yeah, it's another. This is another knife from the same manufacturer. You see this is a mark here. This is just another model for the hunting knife. You see how interesting they did this Damascus pattern here. It's totally different, different layers, but they have a core layer of some kind of hardened, super hard steel, which is not Damascus, not layered. And then on both sides, you have a Damascus with the interesting pattern, just kind of covering it and making it even stronger. This is a strong, very strong hunting knife. It's a little bit more expensive one than this. Of course, you see all kind of different bolsters here and Karelian birch, or maybe it's even like burl here on the sides of a knife. Another very good knife from the same maker. But this one they decided to make out of Damascus, and in order for that Damascus to be visible on this side, they made a cutting edge, they sharpened it from this side. And that's what is wrong, in my opinion. What I know about Yakutian knives is that they gotta be sharpened on a stone. Just put them flat on a stone and sharpen like this. And this forms the edge with the curved or convex, I should say, other side. So the edge got to be made out of from this side, but not from here. But because this knife is made of the Damascus, and of course when it's made from Damascus, it's got to be edged to reveal all of those layers. If you start sharpening here, you won't see the layers. You'll see the kind of shining surface here. And then, of course, the fuller will be in the middle. Would look, I shouldn't say ugly, but would look very simple. Well, by the way, Yakutian knives, which made out of single steel, high carbon or stainless, they look like that. They look like a shining here. Of course, it's not like a full mirror finish. They put some kind of like a satin finish in here, satin finish here, but this side would be absolutely not sharpened. There will be no edge here. The edge would be formed by sharpening this knife on a flat stone like this. And that's another benefit from this specific shape of a knife, that it's so easy to sharpen as long as you have a flat stone. That's another feature of those Yakutian knives, which I just wanted to mention. Again, traditional way to do it. And one more thing, this specific knife, I still bought it, and I think I bought it on like a sale. The official price for this knife at the moment, I think, is a little bit over $150 in Russian rubles, of course. You can order those knives online. They became recently very, very popular in Russia because of this cool history, cool look, and so on. A lot of makers, not only in Yakutia, but around Russia, they make Yakutian style knives. Some makers make them in a factory in a very, very simplistic way. They still call it Yakutian knife. They just pretty much grind a fuller, super wide fuller from a blade. It's a cheaper construction, of course. It's cheaper manufacturing process. You will get the benefits of this shape of blade with this type of construction, but you will not get this cool factor of seeing all of those hammered marks in your blade, comparing to the knife which is made by the real knife manufacturer, knife master. Some of the usually the way this knife was usually carried is on the neck. Is more like, as you can imagine, people would have a lot of warm clothes will be on neck. So this knife does not have any traditional carry options. Usually what they do, I'll just try to illustrate it. What they do, they have this is just a piece of leather, so they kind of wrap the knife like this. So let's say this would be the if you want to take it on your, when it's on your neck, you would have one side which you wanted your knife to go into a handle, so most likely like this, and then they would wrap it with leather, and then the leather would be attached to the sheath. Here there will be a stitch. Of course, it's not. It needs to be cut, and of course, it doesn't have to be this wide. It can be like half of the cave here, and then here will be like a stitch which you would sew together, and then it would have some holes for your like not a lanyard, your neck carry string, or can be braided from leather traditionally or some other string, and then it would be carried on the neck, and then you would when you take the knife out, you well, I did it the other way. It's got to be like this, and then when you put it back, this friction between the leather wrap and the handle would kind of also help it hold together. So that's how this knife, or this type of knife, also can be made. And some of those Yakutian knives which I've seen, they were made this way. For example, this leather would be flush with the wooden sheath. It will look way better. It will have stitching here, carry options here. Would look really nice. This one looks more like a premium souvenir or gift option. So at the same, I kind of like it and don't like it at the same time. This what makes this knife look very similar to Japanese knife. And again, that's why I brought them together in the same video. Again, I'm trying to collect knives from different regions, from around the world, from different cultures, especially if I've been to that region, if I can experience that culture and know a little bit about the history. So that's why I when I had a chance to buy this knife, and again, I didn't pay full price for this knife. I bought it kind of on a sale with a little bit over $100. That's what I paid for this knife. And this knife, I bought it on Massdrop. Again, I had some kind of like discount or coupon code on Massdrop. I applied it there, didn't pay full price again. I decided I gotta have those knives for my collection, and I decided I gotta share this knowledge with you guys. So I hope it was interesting. I was trying to kind of give you that information about this specific type of knife. It's not that much information about Yakutian knife on the internet. I'll share some links in the description for the video. If you want to know a little bit more, if you like it, you'll be able to find it. I'll share the link to the manufacturer for this knife in the description. I'll share the link to Massdrop site for this knife. It's not available at the moment, but sometimes they come back. You can always like request a knife to come back. If you want something which, like in my eyes, represents Japanese style of a knife, you'll be able to get it. And with that, I think that's it for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions or additional ideas about those knives, something to clarify or maybe correct me if I'm wrong, especially I may be wrong a little bit on a Japanese history, feel free to correct me. One more time, thank you, and see you soon.